Okay, I'm speaking to you today from the banks of the lower Cahaba River. Cooking a little bacon over the open fire, but actually what we're going to do today is to try out the wild wood gas stove that I recently purchased. It came from England. We'll get it set up over there by the bottle tree and let you see how it works. Okay, I'm sitting next to the bottle tree. I'm going to show you about my wild wood gas stove. Recently got. Comes in a little black bag here that keeps the soot out of it. This is a stove that uses the principles of convection to burn wood and then actually reburn the gases. If you decide to use the stove, you'll certainly never run out of fuel. But the stove nestles together. It's still got plenty of room in there for other things like your matches or fire starter or whatever. But this is the bottom part. And this is the top part. You can see it has holes on the inside of this. This is a double-walled piece of metal, and it sits on top of this little stand here. And air is drawn into the bottom, comes through the double walls, and then is ported out through these holes here. When you build a fire in the bottom, the fire combusts, but not all of the energy has been used. Some of the energy is released in the atmosphere. But as this air comes along the side of this double wall, comes out this port, it reignites the unspent gases and will reburn the gases to a nice flame consistency. It's much less smoke and much hotter flame. Now the top of this is a little fussy to work with, but basically it's got this is up to nestle your pot in, and once you get this thing rigged up, it makes a nice little place for your pot to sit on. Fairly sturdy. Get this done. There we go. And then this will set on top of the stove. I'm going to take it off in order to load the fuel. The good thing about these stoves is that you certainly can never run out of fuel. I've taken some little oak shavings and kind of fuzzed them up a little bit. We're going to pour them in there. And then we'll take a little piece of cardboard, tear it up, put it in there so we can get it lit. This stove weighs 280 grams according to the instructions. I have no idea how many ounces that is because I don't do grams, comrade, nor do I do milliliters, and I certainly don't do millimeters or centimeters. I like the old-fashioned ounces and inches. What we're going to do is take some matches here, catch a little piece of cardboard in there. Hopefully that'll burn down and catch our wood on fire. And of course what you'll do once this gets started is you'll put the top on here, and then we're going to take a canteen cup. We're going to put a couple ounces of water, and today we're having some gumbo soup mix from Bear Creek. This makes 8 servings. Certainly don't need that many, as you can tell, but we're going to cut this and maybe take about 1/4 of it and see how this turns out. Okay, it's now been about 3.5 minutes, and if you take a look inside the container, we can see water's beginning to boil. Off camera I was able to add a couple of sticks of fuel to it without taking the container off, but also didn't have a top on it, so you could probably shorten your boil time if you had a top. I'm going to add this gumbo soup mix in here. We're going to try to put about 1/4 of it in. How about that? Sweet. Ease about 1/4 of it in there. And after we do that, we're just going to stir it around a little bit. We're going to find something to cover it with, and we're going to cook it for 20 minutes, stirring occasionally. Okay. Okay, I'm going to give you another shot of the stove in action. The fuel level went down a little bit, and I took the pot off and added a little bit of fuel. took a little while for it to get stoked up again. It began to smoke. But then immediately when it burst into flames, the smoke disappeared and the whispery quiet action of the wild wood gas stove begins. You can see around the inner rim of this stove little jets of flame, and that's the action of this stove bringing in air from the bottom under here in these little ports up the double wall, and then it's jetted back into the combustion chamber. And the little pattern of flames that you can see around the edge is that flame reigniting the gas that's coming out of the stove, burning it a second time, and the result is a very clear flame, smokeless, and it's quite hot. I would recommend having a set of or some sort of saw with you. It's helpful to have the fuel in the right size chunks, about as big as maybe the first joint in your finger. Those little chunks go in there, work really well. It's hard to break off a stick that small. But also it's good to have a supply of them on hand, because if you run out and have to do what I did, then you may find that the stove will smoke up a bit before you get it started again. Okay, well, we're back at the campfire, back to our bacon here. This takes actually an incredibly long amount of time if you're trying to cook it without a flame. Just cooking it over coals really doesn't cook the bacon like your typical, like you'd like to have it. So basically you're just going to have to get it where it'll flame up a little bit and be very careful with it. Anyway, back to our wood gas stove. The wood gas stove has cooled off now, and I'm just going to show you how much ash we have. A very small amount. It's actually not completely even burned up yet, but burns up quite a bit. And then our meal looks pretty good. We've let it cook for about 20 minutes just according to the instructions here. We made a little spoon. Taste it. It's quite good. So all in all, the wild wood gas stove is a success. It's better than cooking over an open flame. You do have to keep feeding the wood into it, fuel, sit around and take your time, but it works out pretty well for me. All right, we'll see.